Hello, I'm Hazel. I'm a chiropractor, yoga and breathwork instructor, and today I'll be chatting to you about posture. So in my opinion, there is no perfect posture that you would want to maintain. Ideally, you would move, change and mix up how you sit or stand at any given time. Our body isn't designed to be in a static position. But for a lot of us, because of our job, we may find that we're in one posture for quite a prolonged period of time. So if you are finding that you're standing up, say, for quite a long period of time, it's maybe just some advice about how you could think about doing that without putting undue stress or strain on the structures of your body. And essentially, in these positions, we're looking for a neutral spine and a neutral pelvis. And in that neutral position, that's where our body can hopefully sustain the downward pressure that we're putting onto the structures of our body. Now, for some individuals that have been used to having a posture that isn't ideal, and a lot of those postures are what we would call a rounded with an anterior head carriage posture. So for example, this type of posture, if you've done that for a prolonged period of time, it's actually going to be quite challenging to then come to neutral spine. So just a little caveat there to this, that you may need to go away and have treatment or do rehabilitation to be able to actually get yourself back to a neutral spine. And that's why it's very individual for every individual patient of what's actually going to be the best posture for them at that time. So if we look at standing posture to begin, ideally you would have your feet hip width apart and you would avoid completely locking out the joints of the knees, particularly if you've got some hypermobility. So even though the leg is relatively straight, there's going to be a slight softness in the knee joint, and that's to keep the active muscular structure working as you stand in that posture. As we come up into the pelvis, we're aiming for a neutral pelvis. You imagine your hip bones, these bony bits that stick out the front, to be headlights. We want the headlights to be pointing parallel. So rather than the headlights pointing down or the headlights pointing up. And I'll show you that from the side. So neutral pelvis is with the headlights pointing forwards. Otherwise you're coming into what we would call an anterior pelvic tilt, or you're coming into a posterior pelvic tilt. And these are two very common positions that people can get into when they're stood up for a prolonged period of time. As we come up into the low back, you would ideally have a slight bit of tone held in the muscular abdomen, so a little bit of hold of your core, and they're the deep muscles that surround our spine. Now you wouldn't be holding in your core enough that it would affect your breath at all. Then coming up into the upper part of your back, the shoulders are down and relaxed, and the head is forwards, but it's in line with the body. So for a lot of us, we have an anterior head carriage, and that's where the head is being brought forward of midline. So ideally, we would start to draw the chin back so that the heavy weight of our head is sat directly on top of our body. So from the side, a standing posture essentially looks like this, and from the front, it would look like this. Now, translating that into a seated posture would essentially mean that you're trying to find pelvic neutral once more. So if easier, come from both extreme positions and see if you can find the point where it feels like your headlights are going to be parallel with the ground, with a slight tone in your belly, the shoulders relaxed, the chin gently drawn back. We call that retraction, to bring the head online. And ideally, though I find this one tricky myself, your feet would be planted on the floor and not crossed or twisted in any way. And as you can see, the average chair is not designed for you to actually sit in this upright posture. A lot of chairs are designed for us to be slightly slouched. So if you're working with an office chair, you would want to have back support here to help you sit in this position throughout the day. So as you can see, it's a little bit tricky to necessarily find that posture, and ideally, particularly if you had a seated job, you would vary the posture throughout the day And that's why sit to stand desks are quite useful, because by definition we don't want to be holding any posture for a prolonged period of time. Thank you.